Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's me, your guide from the dark side, Dawson Richard. How is everybody doing this spectacular evening? I hope you are well. I have a quick disclaimer before today's episode. I know that in the last episode on the Bell Witch, I mentioned we would be talking about H.H. Holmes, but the more I looked into that subject, the less interested I became in the case. I feel like a lot of the things that initially drew me towards the case just kind of ended up being fake and fabricated, so I didn't really find it interesting. And I felt that if I wasn't wholeheartedly invested, it was going to be kind of a half-assed episode, and I do not want to give you guys half-assed episodes. So, I have chosen a new and more interesting topic that I hope you all will enjoy. So, as always, if you are squeamish around gore, murder, and other heinous acts of violence, please back out now.
3 months ago, sarin nerve gas was released on the Tokyo subway during the morning rush
Shoko
hour.
Asahara, the mastermind of the deadliest terrorist incident in Japan.
Asahara was the head of the Aum Shinrikyo cult that carried out the sarin gas attack on the Tokyo subway system.
Today's episode is going to be on the Aum Shinrikyo cult of Japan. I had only ever heard this name, I had never been told the story, I didn't know anything about it. But as I looked into it, because I was doing some research on cults, I got super interested in the story and all the little intricacies of the cult. And I'll go into why that is later in the episode, and also be advised that there are a lot of Japanese names and places that I mention in this episode, and if I butcher the pronunciation, I apologize wholeheartedly. But without further ado, let's get right into today's episode. Born on March 2nd in 1955, Chijo Matsumoto lived a hard life. His family were tatami mat makers living on Japan's southwestern island of Kyushu. His family was very large, with Chizuo being one of 9 and very poor. On top of this, Chizuo had infantile glaucoma from birth, and because of this he lost sight in his left eye and was partially blind in his right. He was enrolled in a school for the blind and was known as a bully by other students. Students who attended the school with him reported that he would take advantage of his fellow students by beating them and extorting them for money. One student was even quoted saying, for him, violence was like a hobby. Once he got angry, there was no way to stop it. So already right off the bat, he's a little shit. Like, he's a little asshole already. But he graduated in 1977 and turned to the study of acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, which, when I brought this up to my wife, she was kind of surprised. She's like, the dude's almost completely blind. Like, why would he be doing acupuncture? But apparently, that's a common career for the blind in Japan, which I found very interesting. But because of his poor eyesight, he was unable to pursue his first choice of medical school, and he failed to gain admission to study law at the University of Tokyo. Now, why would he want to do law? Well, that was a good way of working into the nation's upper class. So in 1978, he married a woman by the name of Tomoko, and the couple would go on to have 4 daughters and 2 sons. 4 years later, Chizuo had a run-in with the law after being caught selling unregulated drugs out of his acupuncture practice. He was fined 200,000 yen. So, already, he's fucking selling drugs, all this shit. Here we go. So at this time, he also got very interested in religion and also changed his name to Shoko Asahara. Having been recently married, he worked to support his large and growing family. He dedicated his free time to the study of various religious concepts, starting with Chinese astrology and Taoism, before becoming a member of a small new religion called Aganshu, a movement with very strong Hindu and Buddhist elements. He also reportedly traveled to India and claimed to have reached enlightenment while there, up in the Himalayas, which, for those of you who don't know what enlightenment is, it's this belief popular in Buddhism where you achieve complete spiritual insight and knowledge, and you become aware of it all and kind of like break away from that cycle of rebirth and reincarnation. So after this, he emerged back into the public as a yoga instructor. So around this time, around 1984, Asahara also formed the Aum Shinrikyo no Kai, a belief system that took inspiration from science, occultism, Buddhism, Eastern religion, and New Age theology. So Asahara as a leader was highly intelligent and very charismatic. At this time, he began to hand out leaflets, he was preaching on street corners, and he started teaching yoga and healing through the use of these herbal medicines. and he renamed his system to Aum Shinrikyo in 1987. So by now, Asahara's got a lot of followers. People are starting to buy into what this guy's selling, specifically graduates from Japan's elite universities. They started calling it a religion for the elite, and Asahara applied for government registration. And although like authorities and like officials were kind of reluctant to give this guy like an actual like religious like status, eventually the Tokyo Metropolitan Government eventually granted it legal recognition as a religious corporation in 1989. So at this point, Asahara is now a religious leader. You know, his little organization here is now a full-on religion, and he gains a lot of credibility and publicity by appearing on TV and on magazine covers, and he gradually starts attaining this following of believers, and they even let him give lectures at universities and shit. So like he's like going to colleges and talking about his religion. And you know, being blind also gave him this like oracle-like mysticism, like because he couldn't see, people were like, "Oh my God, he's," stuff like that. And then it gets even worse when he starts claiming to be able to purge people of their sins and heal their souls and take all the pain out of their life onto himself. So now he's like claiming stuff that like, Jesus said and all this crazy stuff. Well, he then has like this animated trailer for his little, religion. It's a cult. Like, we're not going to beat around the bush anymore. It's getting culty. So it's a cult now. But he has like, anime is really popular over in Japan. So he's now has like this animated like commercial for his religion. And he's got like this little minute long, anime trailer for his cult. And it's like has him like levitating and opening his third eye and shit. At one point, there's like lightning shooting out of his hands, and he transforms into this fucking spirit bird, and it's extra as fuck. That's all I'm gonna say about it. Definitely worth the watch. Asahara also wrote several religious books around this time, including Beyond Life and Death and The Supreme Initiation. So by 1988, the cult has begun engaging in this criminal behavior, forcing donation from members and even holding them captive. But the kicker came in February 1989 when several of Asahara's followers strangled to death a fellow cult member, Shuji Taguchi, who tried to leave the organization. So she's trying to get out, and Asahara orders her to be executed. So they strangle her to death. And then on November 4th, 1989, a couple of disciples of Asahara raid the home of Tsutsumi Sakamoto, who was a lawyer who was handling the complaints against the religious group. They kidnapped his wife and his 1-year-old son. One of the members of this little group was Asahara's bodyguard. He was skilled in karate, and he severely beat the lawyer before finishing him off and kicking his wife in the stomach while the other members strangled her. What the fuck? So, like, they just kill this lawyer and his wife. It's already getting crazy. We're in this shit. Let's go. So why was the lawyer killed? Well, a Japanese news network had filmed an interview with Sakamoto a few weeks earlier in which the lawyer was discussing his great concerns about the cult and its fanatical tendencies. So he was talking smack. He's basically just on the news network talking shit. And the network showed the tape to Aum Shinrikyo senior members to seek some comments. So like, fucking, oh my God, this news station killed this poor man and his wife. Like, this news station was like, did this interview with this guy. He's talking smack, and then they show the cult. They're like, hey, what do you think about this? Does this, like, make you mad? Does this upset you? And then, of course, naturally, the cult, because they're fucking crazy, were like, yeah, let's fucking kill this guy, because he's talking shit. So, oh, fuck. So the Kanagawa police did a sloppy investigation of the disappearance of this lawyer, even failing to find an Aum Shinrikyo badge that had fallen at the scene of the crime. So there's literally evidence on the scene, and the cops just didn't find it. And some people even speculate that the reason that they fucked up was because there was a cult sympathizer within the police force. So, spooky shit. So 1990 rolls around, Asahara and his group of followers are starting to try and run for parliamentary elections. So, they're trying to get in with the big wigs, and they fail. It doesn't happen. So this point, the group gets even darker. Asahara does. He begins to delve into these doomsday prophecies. He's preaching that, like, the end of the world is near, and that the Aum Shinrikyo followers, all of his disciples, are going to be the only ones to survive the apocalypse, which he was predicting would occur somewhere in 1996 or 1999, and even, like, 2003. which, joke's on you, fucker, it's 2020. Asahara claimed that the United States would hasten Armageddon by starting World War III with Japan, and he starts like giving all these doomsday prophecies about like nuclear war and these dark conspiracies. Like he's like accusing the Jews and the Freemasons and the Dutch and the British royal family and even like these other Japanese religions. So he's just fucking firing shots at fucking everybody. It was also during this time that Asahara decided that he was, Christ. He was, the next enlightened one. He also identified himself as the Lamb of God and claimed to be the first enlightened one since the Buddha. And most of the worship and devotion of the Aum Shinrikyo was aimed at, you guessed it, Asahara. So this is where I got super invested in the story, and as I read, I was just like blown away by this. Well, why? Because for those of my audience who are not aware, I am a practitioner of the Buddhist philosophy. Like, I'm a Buddhist. And as to read about this guy who's claiming to teach Buddhist values and all this shit was like super intriguing. So as I started reading, I just see all these like blazing red flags. Like, for starters, in almost every form of Buddhism, there is no deity worship. A common misconception is that as Buddhists, we see Buddha as a Christian or a Catholic would see God, and that when we meditate, we're praying to Buddha. But this isn't true. Buddha is considered a teacher, and when people have statues or meditated altars of him, it's more of just like respect to a teacher for all the knowledge we've been given and all the knowledge he's passed on. Buddhism is also in itself non-theistic. I know some Buddhists who do believe in a higher cosmic power that like binds everything together, but I wouldn't say it's like a god per se. It's more of just this overarching cosmic force. But religious lessons aside, for this guy to be placing himself on such a pedestal as the Buddha, and to be like calling himself a god and like the next Christ and having all his followers revere him like a deity is just the biggest red flag ever. Like, that is so far from what Buddhism teaches. It's just so silly. And to me, anyone who knew anything remotely about Eastern philosophy, or more specifically Buddhism in general, would have caught on to what a sham and what a charlatan this guy was. So with all this talk of doom and apocalypse and war, Asahara wants his people to be ready. To do what? Well, to fight this war. The group began the planning stage to create weapons of mass destruction. Yoshihiro Inoue, a member of the cult, stated in a court testimony in 1997 that Asahara's final goal was to take over the world by spreading sarin in Japan and the United States, killing the emperor and winning over Russia by bribery. So the cult needed funds to bring these plans to a head and had no problems about gaining those funds by any means possible. So they began manufacturing these methamphetamines and selling them to the Japanese mafia, the Yakuza. So the group successfully recruits several Yakuza to its cause. So now the Japanese mafia is involved. And one of these members was assigned to help manufacture guns, which is a rare item in Japan because it has very strict gun control laws. And then Hideo Murai, this Minister of Science and Technology, watched over the weapons development and acted as a conduit for the Yakuza, so he's like their go-between guy. However, the cult also ran legitimate businesses, like curry shops and personal computer stores and yoga classes, so that's how they're getting all their money, and it was estimated that Aum Shinrikyo had assets of close to $1 billion by 1995. So the cult is also known to have considered assassinations on several other individuals that were like considered critical to the cult. One of them was like the heads of this Buddhist organization called Soka Gakkai, and also the Institute for Research in Human Happiness. And there was even a cartoonist by the name of Yoshinori Kobayashi who did like, satire comics of the cult, and they had him on their fucking assassination list, so... So Shinrikyo wasn't just in Japan, though. The cult set up operations in at least 7 different countries, including Russia, Australia, Germany, Yugoslavia, Taiwan, and Sri Lanka. The United States was not only a training base and weapons development site for members of the cult, but they were also considering a large-scale attack on New York City. So you're probably wondering, how the fuck did these guys slip in under the US's nose? Well, Aum Shinrikyo came to the United States officially in late 1987. It settled into New York under the name of the Aum USA Company, and although the office, was claiming to promote the cult's book sales and recruitment of followers, the office was also acting as a purchasing agent for the cult as it attempted to obtain high technology equipment, computer software, and hardware from these other, United States locations. Much of which was intended to assist the cult's military program. And additionally, in 1990, the cult used a purchasing agent in California to get their hands on technology and hardware, and also military equipment such as gas masks. So 1993, the group has moved forward substantially with their chemical weaponry. They managed to synthesize VX gas and sarin, which are both deadly nerve gases. VX gas was originally developed by Nazis during the Holocaust. The Australian Federal Police later found that in the spring of 1993, the cult had purchased a 500,000-acre sheep farm, and they had set up this laboratory on the farm, and, they were testing fucking this gas, and a couple of the members were stopped by Australian customs due to suspicious behavior, and they searched their bags and found like 4 liters of concentrated hydrochloric acid and other containers that were marked as like hand soap, but they were like actually ammonium chloride and sodium sulfate and all this crazy shit. So they confiscated all the chemicals and the laboratory equipment, and the police later confirmed that Aum had conducted experiments on the sheep there, and they extracted trace elements of sarin from the ground where a group of 29 dead sheep had been found. So developing chemical gas to kill people is already scary enough, but apparently Shinrikyo started looking for ways to spread the sarin as quickly as possible. What quicker way could there be than doing it via helicopter? So in October of 1993, 2 cult members came to the US to obtain pilot license for private helicopters. They received their flight lessons from a private flight school in Florida, obtained their pilot rating for rotorcraft helicopters, and shortly after that, the group purchased a helicopter from Russia. So at this point, they've got fucking pilots, they've got a helicopter, they've got gas masks, they've got all these chemical agents, they've got weapons, they got a drug trade going on. Like, this cult is going fucking insane. So June 27th, 1994 is the night that would set the fuse. The cult carried out the first of their chemical weapons attacks against civilians when they released sarin in the central Japanese city of Matsumoto, Nagano. With the help of a converted refrigerator truck, members of the cult released a cloud of sarin, which floated near the homes of some of the judges who were overseeing a lawsuit concerning a dispute against the cult. Surprise, surprise. The Matsumoto incident killed 8 and harmed 500 more. Police investigations focused only on one innocent local resident, Yoshiyuki Kuno, who was the first man to report the attack. His wife died from exposure to the chemical agent. So the cops are fucking suspecting the one guy whose wife died from the attack, and he's coughing up shit, and they're accusing him of doing it. I'm at a loss for words. So that winter, the winter of 1994, Aum Shinrikyo synthesized 100 to 200 grams of VX nerve gas. The purpose of this was to kill a suspected spy. 2 cult members found the man, tackled him, sprinkled some of the nerve agent onto his neck. He then chased them for about 100 yards before collapsing. He died 10 days later while still in a deep coma. So now they're just assassinating people with the fucking VX nerve gas, which is scary in itself. So in February of 1995, a few months later, several cult members kidnapped Kiyoshi Kariya, a 69-year-old brother of one of the members who had escaped. So they took him from the street in Tokyo and to their compound, which was near Mount Fuji. There, they murdered him. How did they dispose of his corpse? Well, they destroyed it in a microwave-powered incinerator, and the remnants were disposed of in Lake Kawaguchi. Fucking terrible. This is just monstrous shit. Turns out, though, Kariya had prepared for this. Before he was abducted, he had been receiving these threatening phone calls demanding to know the whereabouts of his sister, who was the former cult member. So he left a note saying, "If I disappear, I was abducted by Aum Shinrikyo." So he's fucking laying it all out for him. But at this point, it would be too late. Because finally, on the morning of 20th of March, 1995, came the morning. A morning that would be remembered in Japan's history for years to come. Aum members made preparations for their largest act yet. They were going to release a binary chemical weapon, most closely related to sarin, in a coordinated attack on 5 trains in the Tokyo subway system. This attack was planned in Kasamagaseki due to its closeness to the police station and also for the number of public officials who often took this route to work. Their attack was to take place between 8 o'clock and 8:10 a.m., the rush hour for that particular subway, so they're trying to maximize the casualties. Once the massive panic ensued as the gas caused victims to choke, vomit, and fall down with severe coughing, first responders were also injured and at least one Metro employee lost his life trying to save the commuters. This dreaded attack ended up killing 13 commuters. seriously injuring 54 and affecting 980 more. Some estimates claim as many as 6,000 people were injured by the sarin. It is difficult to obtain exact numbers, however, since many of the victims won't come forward. So after all this happens, Asahara gets a tip from an insider about these planned police raids on their cult facilities. Over the next week, the full scale of Aum's activities was revealed for the very first time. Raids were conducted on all of the Aum Shinrikyo facilities all around the world and also at the cult's headquarters in Kamakushiki at the foot of Mount Fuji. Police found explosives, chemical weapons, and a Russian military helicopter. There were also stockpiles of chemicals that could be used for producing enough sarin to kill 4 million people. Police also found laboratories to manufacture drugs such as LSD, methamphetamine, and they even had a crude form of a truth serum and a safe containing millions of US dollars in cash and gold, and cells that still contained prisoners. During the raids, Aum issued statements claiming that the chemicals were for fertilizers. Over the next 6 weeks, over 150 cult members were arrested for a variety of offenses. On March 30th, 1995, Takaji Kunamatsu, chief of the National Police Agency, was shot 4 times near his house in Tokyo and was seriously wounded. And a lot of people suspect that Aum Shinrikyo cultists were behind it. But no official reports have been claimed, so we don't know. So this next one's pretty wild. On the 23rd of April, 1995, Hideo Murai, the head of Aum's Ministry of Science, so he's part of it, was stabbed to death outside the cult's Tokyo headquarters amidst a crowd of about 100 reporters in front of cameras. The man responsible for the stabbing was a Korean member of Yamaguchi Gumi, which is like the Yakuza, and he was arrested and eventually convicted of the murder. It is believed that his motive behind it was to keep Hideo from revealing any Yakuza involvement with the cult, so they're trying to clean the slate. On the evening of the 5th of May, a burning paper bag was discovered in a toilet in Tokyo's busy Shinjuku station. Upon examination, it was revealed that it was a hydrogen cyanide device, which, had it not been extinguished in time, would have been released enough gas into the ventilation system to potentially kill 10,000 commuters. Several other undetonated cyanide devices were found at other locations in the Tokyo subway. So at this point, the world's going fucking crazy. This terror cult is just trying everything it can to cause as much chaos as possible. Well, Asahara was finally found hiding within a wall of a cult building known as the Sixth Station in the Kamakushiki complex on the 16th of May and was arrested. On the same day, the cult mailed a parcel bomb to the office of Yukio Aoshima, the governor of Tokyo at the time. His secretary went to open the package and in turn had their fingers blown off. Asahara was initially charged with 23 counts of murder and 16 other offenses. The trial, dubbed the trial of the century in Japan by the press, ruled Asahara guilty of masterminding the attack and sentenced him to death. So after his capture, Aum Shinrikyo came under new management and was stripped of its status as a religion. It changed its name to Aleph and was succeeded by Asahara's 2 sons for a time. It went under some other management, but ultimately fell into this weird space of are we a religion? Are we still a thing? Are we not a thing? So all these years pass, sometime after April 2013, the Public Security Intelligence Agency took this photograph inside of, the new cult's facilities. In this photograph, a bundle of papers is pierced with a knife on an altar-like object. The papers included photographs of PSIA employees and directors, police officers, and lawyer Taro Takimoto, who helped followers leave Aum Shinrikyo. And at this point in time, they still have, portraits of Shoko Asahara, using videos of him and having pictures in their fucking cult headquarters or whatever. So, it's obviously still really fucking sketchy. So on the 5th of April 2016, the Investigative Committee of Russia announced that it was opening a criminal case against Aum Shinrikyo followers and that its investigators were conducting raids in Moscow and St. Petersburg to find and confiscate any religious items or information that pertained to Aum Shinrikyo. On the 20th of September in 2016, the Russian government banned Aum Shinrikyo in the country and declared it as a terrorist organization. It wasn't long until a lot of other countries followed suit. America, Japan, China, all of these places are now recognizing it as a terrorist organization. On the 6th of July in 2018, a lot of people got their wish. So roughly only 2 years ago, Shoko Asahara and 6 other members of the Aum Shinrikyo were executed by hanging. So finally, the legacy of Aum Shinrikyo comes to an end, right? Not exactly. On January 1st, 2019, in Tokyo, an Aum sympathizer, Kazuhiro Kusakabe, intentionally rammed into pedestrians crowded into a street in the district during New Year's Eve. He claimed this was a retaliation for the executions of Aum Shinrikyo, and people still don't know if he was referencing the 2018 executions or just, making a broader statement. But the attack on New Year's Day left 8 injured, and a 9th person was also directly injured by the driver. So the point there being that there are still people out there that I guess fucking buy into this shit. They still believe this guy, and they still believe in what he strove for. And I don't know. Cults are just so fascinating in the way that they work and the way that people can manipulate them into doing what they want. But there's a lot of questions still surrounding Aum Shinrikyo. Why didn't the police do more? From the beginning of the story, you heard the police almost did nothing. How deeply were they infiltrating the Japanese government? Apparently there were a lot of members deep within the government. Why is it still allowed to exist today, even though they just fucking switched the name? And of course, why did the Ministry of Justice suddenly execute 7 members? Why that day? It's been so long past that. Why did you choose 2018 to hang them? But who knows? I'm not a Japanese official. I wouldn't know. So that is it, everybody. That is today's episode. My first cult episode. I always find cults really interesting because of how easy it is for people to fall into this sense of security, and how the cult leader always makes them feel wanted, and he compliments them and then just breaks them down to where they're basically his minions. It's crazy stuff. I hope to do more popular cults in the future. I won't go into any. I want to keep it a surprise for when I reveal the episodes. But that was the episode. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions, as always, leave comments or send an email directly to thevoidfrequency@gmail.com. I read all of your comments, all of your stuff. I enjoy hearing feedback. So yeah, I hope you had a wonderful time. And don't forget to join us next time, where we will be looking at the Mothman. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay weird, everybody.